This episode is brought to you by readers like you. Go to idlethumbs.net/forums to enjoy yourself.
Idle Thumbs. Games, video 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 games, video. Video games.
It's January 29th, 2014.
This is Idle Thumbs 143. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vandeman.
Hey! No, I don't want to talk about what I was going to talk about.
Wow, that was a hell of a...
I thought we were off to the races.
I know,
there.
I did too. I was so excited
your
about
face lit up
not having
like
the awkward moment where we're all waiting
And
for
you
each
did-
other to say
Oh
something.
man, it's because what I was going to talk about is the format of the intro to an Idle Thumbs episode, which seems like that's what we
I think
always...
we already did that last week.
I
and,
know,
like
it's all we
the
ever
other
talk
weeks.
about. Sorry. Think too much about the opening of the episodes.
You spend all week just thinking about the opening of the episode.
And now
like-
it's happening. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're basically in a being John Malkovich of shit.
Anyway, welcome to Idle Thumbs
Thanks,
podcast.
Jake. Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Sean and I played the Banner Saga last night.
I was just
good.
going to say Chris
Few
and I
hours.
played the Banner Saga.
Oh, so you two played the Banner Saga.
We played it together. Mm-hmm. It's not a multiplayer game, but
No.
we played it.
We just played it at the same
together.
computer.
My computer. Mm-hmm. But it's always our computer to me, Chris.
No, thanks, Sean.
It's my computer.
Well, I mean, thanks anyway.
Yeah.
So...
The moments in that game when we were like talking over strategy about how to we were having these really close shaves in some of these battles. It's a turn-based strategy game, not unlike...
I don't like XCOM or something.
XCOM,
I mean, it's
yeah.
Yeah,
the
it's
battle
turn-based
parts
tactical,
are
right?
turn-based tactical,
Yeah,
Final
yeah.
Fantasy Tactics or whatever.
The boards are pretty similar. Plain.
Yeah, they're squares,
Yeah,
basically.
just squares. So those moments when we were deciding, okay, move to this square, let's do this. No, this guy can give this guy a bonus, and then we'll be fine. And eking out battles, so good.
Yeah, really good. Also, it's gorgeous as hell. It's a ridiculously well-drawn game in a very literal sense. The whole thing is done in very traditional animation, the sort of classic Disney style, mid-century, Disney cell animation style, and it's really beautiful. The backgrounds are hand-painted, and characters are all
Even Ivan
hand-animated.
Earl.
They're all Ivan Early. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really,
those
really
trees
nice.
there.
Yeah.
But it was funny. I was talking. I can't remember exactly the observation that was made about the art style, other than it must be weird to be 16
Right.
and play that game. And it's an aesthetic of an era, but
Right, but
we're
it's
now
not.
at an age where things are nostalgic.
That's
for
been
us
sort
like
of
that.
subsumed.
Yeah.
Animation now just means commercial animation doesn't mean a thing that is that anymore,
Right.
At all.
Well, there was also a long time you could never get anything like that made. And that was only probably 5 to 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Where if you were look at these old Tom Orab cartoons from the 50s, people would be like, bleh. But now that sort of has a,
People stopped
and you
making
know
them
what-
and made shitty enough ones.
well, they
that
made
you can-
high fidelity ones, with beautiful, really crisp animation that sort of looked like the thing from the 50s,
That's
but
true.
performed like a game from today.
Right.
And then people accepted it as a
Oh, but I just mean for years there, that stuff died and no one understood what it took to make it because you're like, I will just get the whatever half frame rate weird Thundercats looking thing for a third of the price.
Right. We'll just model something bad. Or we'll do bad 2D animation that we outsource. It's amazing how much animation is in that game because I don't really think the team is very big.
I know, it's kind of bonkers. I mean, it must be it must be a very animator slanted team because I don't know how else you make that thing.
Do you know much about these guys?
No, I really
Actually,
don't.
Stoic.
No.
Yeah. They had this game is a product of a successful Kickstarter. And I really like the turn-based strategy stuff a lot, but I don't like anything else about the game.
So what's the,
like
You don't like the visuals, or
No, I like the visuals. I mean, I'm sorry about the play experience outside.
what's
of the
structure of it? Because I know, Chris, you played the
free-to-play version.
the free to play, like the Banner Saga Factions, which was just the
now
combat.
that I've played Banner Saga, it's just the combat.
yeah, I guess I didn't play very much of it because I started to, and I played a couple battles, and I'm like, I'm just gonna wait till
for the real Banner
right.
Saga.
Yeah.
It was there, man.
That whole intro thing was still in there, or I mean, the tutorial was in there, and the first part where you see the first like town from outside, which I love, like that. God, that is like my favorite looking stuff in the game. Like the character animation stuff is obviously like super gorgeous, but my favorite things are when you have just a long like establishing shot. I mean, you can't really call it an establishing shot because you're interacting with it, but it's serving that purpose of just showing the environment you're in, and it's really pulled back. And there's a few planes of depth, but the cool thing is because it's all 2D hand painted, like every plane of depth has the same level of detail, which is it's a weird thing. Like one, because it's so incredibly high fidelity that it just looks like every depth layer is maxing out the available resolution, which you don't realize is that unusual until you see it, and it just feels like an order of magnitude more crisp than other games you've played. It's a weird sensation, and it makes perfect sense. It's all just 2D flats, but but it still felt very weird to me in a good way. Like I loved it. I never got tired of like cutting back to those big panoramas and scrolling around them and seeing the parallax, and just the level of detail was just bonkers to me. I love that stuff a lot. I really liked it. And then
To get to Jake's question, the play experience is tactical turn-based strategy, but sewn together through.
There's some sort of saga at play here, right?
There's definitely a saga. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. that is not in question.
There's like a legendary story.
Yeah. But you're moving your caravan from like location to location, which has a resource management choice to it. But then you encounter unexpected story events along the way that are, I guess, structurally similar to what happens in something like FTL, but execution-wise, very, very, very different. And then once you get to where you're going, there's usually a lot of actual character interaction with a bunch of dialogue trees and like choice-driven narrative stuff that will ultimately funnel you towards one of these like turn-based tactical battles. And that seems to be the cycle of the game. The issue I have with that is that it's not paced appropriately. Like I feel like we were just trying to get to the next battle.
Right.
And we're talking like in between battles, 5 minutes. That's a long time.
Right.
And that's not like sitting there making tactical
I would
decisions.
say it felt like longer than that sometimes, but that might have just been how it felt.
Right. That's like not making tactical decisions like, oh, I'm going to buy this thing and sell
the
this
thing is,
thing and like upgrade this guy. It's talking to a dude's face.
Right. But the game tells you that you're making meaningful decisions during that times. Like it explicitly tells you, like you're gonna, when you interact with these characters, you're making choices, and the game will remember that. But when you're actually doing it, like there's just so much dialogue, and like the choices are so like ill-defined to me, and like just the overall like quantity of fiction is so overwhelming that I'm like, well, I mean, if I just click through all these, I'm gonna get to the next battle. Like I feel like the game gave me so much context that it like overwhelmed this whatever stakes are involved, and like I just didn't connect to it anymore.
I had a really hard time feeling like I was a person imparting like with agency, even though
the game explicitly tells you that's what you are.
Like that is the entire crux of the experience, which was really troubling to me. I had a really hard time getting over that.
Which is a bummer because to me, it's a super typical case of a game that like just is not as good as it could be because they actually just added too much stuff.
Right.
And if it was literally the exact same game, but just had like 75% less of that stuff in between battles, I think it'd be way snappier and way better and would be a lot more impactful. And
like all that story stuff was snappier in the sense of something like FTL or Flotilla or the Yawhg. it would be like,
I feel like the
I wouldn't
Yawhg
be here because I'd be playing it still.
Yeah, I know. We talked a lot about the Yawhg last night when we were playing it. I really feel like the Yawhg is disproportionately important, like relative to how substantial an experience it feels like.
It's kilobyte footprint.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels
the
very
kind of
slight as a game.
Yeah, the game kind of presents itself almost as a trifle, which is cool. But like that like sort of belies how I think like punchy and
It's super good.
like
It's just
tight and
you make a decision. Here's what the repercussion is, and you
right.
just go.
But not only that, like the decisions are presented in like a colorful way. That's everything is like tonally of a piece. Like the way it looks and reads and sounds all fits together in a way that is, I think, really affecting and convincing. Like I suspend my disbelief across that for the most part. And I feel like anyone who's making a game that involves this kind of branching or sort of pseudo branching narrative choice just needs to play that game because it'll take you not very long.
Yeah.
And it does what it does so much better than most games. Like that game, and then if you have the patience for it, Crusader Kings 2, because that game, like,
Right.
you made the observation last night that game manages to present these situations in fewer words than the Banner Saga does, and Crusader Kings 2 is like actually taking on the entirety of like
It's encapsulating the
feudal
entire
history,
Western European
like,
history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that is like it's really substantial shit that's going on, and like I still feel like in a lot of cases,
And they're hamstrung
it's
by
snappier.
historical rules as opposed to saying, why don't we just not have it be the case that this type of guy
Right.
can't become
Right.
this type of leader.
Right.
Well, you can do that in a fantasy realm. Yeah, we can't do
And
that in
then
Crusader
another
Kings.
game that I like in this respect, it's not maybe as applicable as these other two for this, but I still think it's relevant, is the King's Bounty games. Those are games where you like they're like Heroes of Might and Magic, where you kind of run around on an overworld and then you run into enemies and you have turn-based battles. And I love King's Bounty. I played those games for like dozens and dozens of hours. But like along the way, you get these little just bits of story, and they're just like a pane of information, and you react to them, and a thing happens as a result. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's beneficial, and sometimes it harms you. But it's like, they get in, get out. And I don't like, because the substance of the Banner Saga already is this like really well, in my opinion, well-built game that they've constructed, this like really solid turn-based strategy thing.
The strategy stuff is really good.
Yeah, I really,
because we
I
kept
never
kind of
not
unfolding.
enjoyed it.
We kept sort of like peeling back like foibles and nuance. We're like, oh wait, we could totally do this right now. Yeah,
right. And I like that they didn't pull punches, at least on the difficulty level we were playing.
fuck.
Like we had some close calls that were really great,
really hard.
and some losses that were still really entertaining.
Right.
But because that is what the actual game part is, really, I feel like just why even oversell the stuff in between? Like just get in, get out. Like give the players some interesting choices. Keep it snappy. Like don't introduce 5 times as many characters as you need to. Like I don't know. I hate to trash this game because I probably actually will keep playing it and just click through a lot of that stuff. But the reason it bums me out, I guess, is because I feel like this is such a common problem in games.
Right.
Is just like fiction overload, and I'm like, I don't need this much lore. Like I just like who needs that? Like that's not what your game is. It's not actually what your game is.
Yeah. I mean, and to the game's credit, I've had a lot of people who I respect who like play with like friends tell me that they really buy the character interaction. They really start to care start to care for the individual.
Yeah, I think assuming that the game does actually create a suspension of disbelief for you, the reason that you want to progress can flip for some players, presumably.
The problem is, for me, it doesn't.
Right.
With the narrative.
You can tell, though, that from a design standpoint, at least from what it sounds like, what their hope is that you'd want to go and win these battles so that X, Y, and Z would happen next, or so that you could see the next character moment. But if you don't, if they don't grab you at all, then it's like any other game.
It's for me. It's all direction and word choice with this stuff. Like it needs to have half as many words in it, and it needs to be far more explicit.
Yeah.
About because, I mean, I don't think you were in the office when I was talking about this today, but there is a large chunk of the beginning of the game where I don't know who I am. Like I don't know which character I am, and I'm never drawn on screen in something like FTL, or I guess you are in the Yawhg, but it simply says you go to this place, this thing happens to you. You say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You say you do A or B. It's like
Like in FTL, you mean?
Yeah, it's so direct, and you feel like, okay, I am the guy in charge. I am the commander. I am the pilot of this ship.
Is that because they're going for some sort of high concept thing, or do you think that it's just?
That's a good question because I don't know how to answer it.
No, I think they just wrote a story with a lot of characters in it, and it's like this is the one the player is. And,
you're the guy with the horns,
right? But like sometimes that character's not there,
right? But you're still making choices on part of the players characters that are on screen.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I mean, not to talk about The Walking Dead, but it'd be like starting off as Lee, and then it cuts to a scene of like Carly and Kenny, but you're making choices for Kenny, which is cool, but there's no communication of that through direction. And I have a hard time with that because I feel like they have these beautiful portraits on screen. We're cutting between them as they're talking, but literally the nature of the cuts, like which shoulder they cut to, and once they cut, there's this sort of like quarter of a second, like left to right shift, so it feels like the camera kind of like swooped in, you know? That is really disorienting. And that it's 2D flats that it feels like it's jumping the line, but the more I look at, like last night I was like, sure it was, and the more I looked at it, I'm like,
I think it's actually panning. I think it's actually just panning.
The pan makes it feel like
I mean, this is stupid to talk about because we're talking about something that people aren't going to know unless they've played the game.
But I mean, if you've played the game, like I'm just trying to like, I want to justify my criticism, so I'm not just like
sure
like pooped on. But to the larger point is these sorts of directional choices are communication. Therefore, they are game design and build the context for how the player is going to engage the conflict of the experience. So when I am disengaged from that and feel like I can't like wrap my hands around the context of the micro choice that I'm being asked to make, I just kind of throw my hands up and like make it like Chris said. Just
especially because you're faced with so many of these in between battles that you'd start to just kind of get fatigued by them. At least I did. So this is the thing I'm about to say is both I suppose like an extension of the criticism we've been laying, but also in most ways a praise, which is that I think atmospherically this game is like off the charts good in the sense that one, it's gorgeous, like it's just straight up gorgeous, but it's also gorgeous in a way that is very restrained. Like when you were saying like, you know, they didn't give a shit about 16-year-olds when they were making this game. Like there's part of that has to do with, as you say, just the era of animation it draws from. But the part that I like, the way, before you explained that, the way I interpreted that was like how much this game is just not bombastic at all, which I really like. Like everything is presented in this like, this almost sort of glacial pace, and I mean that in a good way. Like animation is sort of deliberate, and like when you're moving from place to place, it's with these sort of almost stately, like slow pan shots that are at great distance. All the like the exterior environments are these like grand sort of pastoral scenes. Like everything is really measured in a way that I think is awesome, and like the soundtrack by Austin Wintory is super subtle and like really evocative. Just all of those like atmospherics are so restrained and so subtle, and so that makes me kind of bummed out that the textual side of it is this like avalanche, right? Because I'm like all the other audiovisual parts are like pulled back, subtle, like sort of quiet, restrained, and I'm like, oh man, that's why I keep thinking of the Yawhg, because the Yawhg has that in text, where it's like it really just sells the atmosphere through all of the trappings of it, and then the text doesn't even need to do any work. That's the thing, right? Like if you're in a video game, like you have all of this shit that you can communicate stuff through, all this tone, and so you really don't, like if you're doing a good job, which in the Banner Saga they absolutely are doing a good job with all that stuff, you don't actually need that many like just words literally on the screen to communicate what you're trying to get across. And so I mean, that's I guess one of the reasons I'll probably be pretty happy to keep playing this, at least for me. I know that like the one part in that equation that I actually have the power to just speed through is the text part. So I might just do that. And like I really do love basically all the other parts of the entire game. Like I hate that we're spending so much time ragging on it, because I feel like there's so many things in this game they did such a good job with.
Right.
That like
I think that's why I'm so pissed. Because it's just like, fuck, you had me. I was everything you're describing is totally what I love. And I see it for all those merits.
Yeah.
But I think those words are really important. Like,
I know.
I'm
not saying they aren't.
You know what I mean? Outside of it, it feels like like an amazing piece of theater where but in a different language, where I'm like, oh, I can really appreciate it for all the set.
But I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, that's enough for me. I'm not saying I prefer. I'm just saying
it's not in a different language. It's fucking English. And I can catch a second of it and be like, no, come on, what?
Yeah. See, I guess I'm just I guess just on a personal level, I'm more able to just overlook that than you are.
I like that,
fair,
though.
right?
Like, I like that about I like that attribute about you. Like, I like that you're able to do that.
Right.
But like,
sure. I mean, brains are different.
It's just, I don't know.
I have one more question about the Banner Saga, which is just what you're saying about the all-encompassing tone of the game, with the exception of the lore dump stuff. Does that carry over to the combat as well?
I actually think it does. So there's a minor thing that kind of annoys me about that part of the combat, where the animations are kind of long and slow and kind of classically dramatic, I guess, which can be kind of annoying in battle when you just want to know instantly, all right, is my guy dead or is he just knocked back? I just hurry up, let's go. But other than that one case, in combat, it still does feel like that. It doesn't. It's turn-based for one thing, which aids in that overall.
Right. The sense of scale and pacing and mood holds up for the rest of the game for you.
It does for me. Totally. In the battles, I feel like this is the thing I thought they actually did pretty well in XCOM as well. Although I think this game is prettier than XCOM probably. But I mean, not that XCOM looks bad, but it's got that great kind of split the difference between it just being obviously turn-based, which is fictionally impossible. There's no that's not a real thing in reality. But because the animation and all of the way that all that stuff is portrayed is done in this deliberate paced manner, it sells it, in a way that an old turn-based game beyond a certain age just doesn't bother because it's so low fidelity that it makes no difference.
Its fidelity choice, or its fidelity means that they are presenting it as symbolic.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's oh, this one guy is actually the cavalry.
And I love one of my favorite moments early in the game was when there's an early cutscene. I think it's before you even have your first battle, and in the middle of a cutscene, they cut to a scene. They cut to a shot of the place the battle is going to occur, and it's just an isometric view because it's the actual map.
Right.
But they just include that as a shot in the cutscene, and I'm like, that is just rad. It's a cool signifier.
In the aesthetic of this game, that is just what these look like in the world, regardless of what mode the game is in.
Exactly, and because their style consistency is so good between in-game paintings, so to speak, and cutscene paintings, it totally fits. But if you're someone who plays video games and you have the notion of an isometric perspective, which is unheard of in film, that wouldn't exist in film. If an isometric perspective means anything to you intrinsically, you catch that for the 2 seconds it's on screen, and I'm like, oh, that means something as a game, and it ties together really well. And so I feel like they really sell the sort of seamlessness between all that stuff, and when it cuts to the in between, the travel stuff where it pulls back, and when it goes to the map, which is I don't really think the map has any agency on it, but it looks really beautiful. Just all that stuff is tied together really well, and I feel like is consistent across all the slices of the game.
Until guys start talking about stuff.
Yeah, at which point it just feels like a goofy fantasy thing. That's kind of where, right? That's the point where it's okay, it's what I think of when I think of genre fantasy stuff, which is people talking forever about lore. I just don't. It's just not for me. I know there are people who like it, obviously, which is great, but it's just not. It's not for me.
Yeah, it's funny saying this isn't for 16-year-olds because of the aesthetics. That's true, except for the types of 16-year-olds who read Lord of the Rings because they liked the original J.R.R. Tolkien watercolor cover art and just go
right, or they've read 47 Piers Anthony novels.
Yeah,
or whatever.
But that's
all copies of Lord of the Rings now have Elijah Wood on the cover.
I know.
Oh, really? I guess that's true. Right? I never.
That might have actually faded back away at this point.
We'll see.
It's Elijah Wood's birthday today.
Really?
Yeah, Broken Age was released on Elijah Wood's birthday.
Happy birthday, Elijah.
Yeah.
Call me. 3MA talked about the Banner Saga as well this week. So if you want to
I like the Banner Saga.
The Bonners.
The Banner Saga.
Yeah. The Bonner Party.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to have to change it to.
Yeah.
Once Candy Crush has their way with them. Yeah, the Banner Saga was talked about by 3 Moves Ahead. So you can check their podcast out as well.
outofthumbs.net/3MA.
Good job, Jake.
Yeah.
No /wizard on that one.
No, don't just go to the /3MA. They don't have an episode called Wizard.
Yet.
God, do we?
No, we have the Wizard.
All right, well, we got to fix that one of these days. idlethumbs.net/idlethumbs/wizard. I guess it'd be /episodes/wizard.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. Yeah, never mind. It's not
have to
important anymore.
This episode is brought to you by Idle Thumbs Episodes. Visit idlethumbs.net/idlethumbs/episodes/wizard for this episode. We'll do that in the future episode. That's like episode 150. Is just called Wizard.
Man, that's so soon.
I know.
I know, it's weird. 150.
Did you play anything else this week?
I've just been playing a lot of Zelda.
Oh, really? The same one? The 3DS one?
Yeah, I'm picking away at it basically. I finally got to the Dark World. It's a Zelda game. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I've been playing it, but it's just because I haven't played a top-down Zelda in long enough that playing a Zelda game is fun.
When it gets dark in DayZ, it's fucking scary.
Just change the subject to DayZ.
I'm saying, is it scary in Zelda?
No.
Are you that rabbit?
No, that rabbit just he sells you stuff.
Oh, really?
That
The
weird rabbit
from
mask
Link
guy?
to the Time?
Huh? Oh,
No,
Dark World Kid?
Link from the Time. What?
Oh, no, in the Dark
Link to
World,
the
that's when
Past.
you don't turn into an animal like that. The Zelda game, it has just as someone who's memorized Link to the Past more or less, having played it a ton of times, it's weird to play this game because it so clearly calls back to A Link to the Past, but seems like it's just missing 30% of the stuff.
It was good because
Which is fine.
when I was playing A Link to the Past, when Jake and I were roommates, he was basically my Nintendo hotline because he had it completely memorized
Yeah,
of what
sure.
I'm in a fucking, where do I go?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm padding out of his room and tell me.
The thing that I'm enjoying the most about it, like this, it's funny because playing Mario 3D World despite the fact that it was so clearly a like mainline like Mario capital game, like it's not. It
Capital
doesn't.
Mario capital game.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't. That game doesn't feel.
That's also a tagline.
It doesn't feel like a side. There's just so much Mario shit that game. That there's just like secondary and tertiary Mario stuff.
Right,
Whereas
right.
Mario 3D World feels like principal Mario, if you will.
Like
Like Mario Dean of Admissions. But
I can't get over Capital Mario. Capital game. And a guy crossing his arms. Sassily.
Going to Principal Mario's office.
my enjoyment of Mario 3D World is, I mean, I'm sure there is nostalgia at play because it's a Mario game and because I love Mario games, but the reason that I'm enjoying it is for all the stuff that it's doing that's different.
Right.
Or for all the stuff
Catsuit.
that it's Catsuit's weird. Mechanics of the Catsuit are great, but whatever.
It is weird though, right? It's a little
it's pretty
salacious.
goddamn weird.
and
Yeah,
like
it is. It is.
It's like a little.
I agree.
A little cheeky. It's
Yep.
a little sort of like throw a hip to the camera.
When Princess
check
Peach,
out my cute little butt.
Peach wears the catsuit, though, it's just gross.
What do you mean? It's not like full. It's not like Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight
No,
Rises?
it's just got like it's really enjoyable.
She
And
doesn't
then
have
it's
spike
like
heels?
weirdly bubbly and stuff. Same with when she wears the Tanuki suit. Like it's just got a big like sphere. Like she puts it on over her dress.
Oh, what?
Oh, what weird.
Anyway, but whatever. I'm really glad that that's
Oh
the
my
case.
god! Is that subtly suggesting that Princess Peach's dress is not a hoop dress and she's just like fucking disfigured underneath there?
I
She's
have no
just
idea.
a hut.
I don't care about that. Anyway, whatever. When I'm playing Mario 3D World, I am enjoying it for all of the stuff that it's doing that's new, or just like the game on its
Sure.
face. But with Link Between Worlds, I'm playing it and I'm like, oh, this is really cool that it's a live arrangement of the Dark World theme from the Super Nintendo game. Like it's just playing it.
You're playing it as an archaeologist now.
It's just fun because
Historian.
it's like rewatching an old movie, but you're rewatching a weird edited for TV version or something where it's
Right.
like.
Sure.
Or like listening to
Well,
like a modern
It just,
hip hop album.
it just feels like an adaptation. It feels like
Okay.
I read all the Harry Potter books. Then when I go into the movie, I'm like, oh, when are they going to get to the scene that I like? And then I can see it with millions of dollars more than obviously were put into the like one watercolor illustration before the chapter. Where it's
Would you
like,
describe it more of an adaptation or a remix? Does it feel like it's a piece? No, I'm serious. It's a real question. An adaptation feels like it's like
reinterpretation.
A reinterpretation, yeah.
I wouldn't say
or
a remix because that implies something else like original assets being used or something. But yeah, it's a reinterpretation. Like it's adapted the way that you would adapt a piece of work into another medium and take liberties, except it's video game to video game.
Right. Yeah. I'm just sort of like, because if you think of Wind Waker, feels like an adaptation of like Zelda lore and all the mechanics in a really like sort of fresh way.
This feels more like I don't even know how to describe what it feels like exactly. It's just there are so many things that are familiar, but the meaning is slightly changed, or like just my response to them is different, but seeing them rendered in a slightly different way, and especially in the case of the audio, just rendered. In the case of the audio, it's just like it's impeccable. Like it's all live orchestration of the exact songs from the Super Nintendo. Like so, having that where I'm just like, wow, the Dark World theme that I loved as a kid and was super evocative. Now, like actually played by a guy on acoustic guitar, crazy. Coupled with specifics that don't match up with that, but still kind of are sharing from it. It's
that feels
it's
like,
weird.
I mean, that to a certain degree, that feels like just Nintendo's MO for the last several years, kind of, right? I mean,
no, I don't
really?
know.
Okay.
It's different in this case because it really does actually what it feels like.
I guess that's a more literal. I guess that's a more direct one-to-one.
Talking this out now is making me like the game less because what it does, which is fine. I'm playing.
That's our goal.
I'm playing it to play it, but what it actually does kind of feel like to me is reading a book that you love and then watching a bad filmic adaptation of it, where it's like some stuff.
Now it's bad.
An adaptation that misses the mark, I think, is a fair comparison.
It's not like a miss the mark updating.
Not made by incompetent people. Like just it's an expensive film that is made from
like the
something
Watchmen
else.
movie or something.
Yeah, kind of.
That's how I felt about that.
You're sort of like watching the Watchmen movie is actually a really apt comparison because that movie occasionally there's just a piece of imagery that comes flying out of it that is super fucking striking and evocative of the comic. And you're like, wow, and then the other hour and 20 minutes of the movie are there and you're like, okay, this looks like Watchmen.
Right.
And like, wow, cool, you've got like the neon sign of the Gunga Diner that looks exactly like the comic or whatever, but then like it doesn't really mean anything in the same way that the original impacted you. That's probably different for other people, but for me, that's kind of what's going on. But it's not as egregious as as Watchmen to Watchmen. Like it's still really enjoyable to be Link and wander around and sword guys and level up. So like I'm still playing it, but
well, they're a little different.
That's a funny thing about video games, though, right? Just in general, is that they can be like just sort of considered good and enjoyable, just like unto themselves, like in a way that. I mean, that's obviously still true of like a movie or a book or something. You can just purely enjoy the pleasure of reading it or watching it. Like that's still true, but I feel like it feels different with video games. Like the like enjoyment for its own sake to me, like just has a different.
Where it's like the way people, and you know what I mean.
You just
we were talking
it.
about The Mentalist last night.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people just want to, or Castle.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of seems that way to me.
Sure.
I don't know.
And they're both long. They're both long, right? I mean, like it's TV season. I mean,
right.
It's like a long thing. Like a video game is long. It's hours and hours.
Yeah. At this point, for the things I'm getting out of it and the way that I'm enjoying this game, I kind of wish that I had somehow, if I could just flip a switch that would switch all of the exact specifics of the world map and all of the way that things are gated out to just be A Link to the Past, because that's actually a more enjoyable game to me. But like I'm just sort of cruising someone's high def interpretation of it now.
Yeah.
And Chris, you and I talked about this a little bit about just the economics of like the sort of economic weapon system. Like you can rent things. You can rent items from the rabbit shopkeeper guy, and then later on in the game you can buy them. And you were wondering, like, is there a value to that? I think we talked about that a couple episodes ago. And at this point, I think I agree with your suspicion that there isn't really a value in it because it's fun to dick around with the different items, but by and large, it still does feel like there is, like you were saying, one optimal way that you weave your way through the light world and the dark world maps to the end of the game. The game now just doesn't tell you what that is, whereas in previous Zeldas, you could kind of poke your way into some dungeons, but they would just be clear, fuck you, you shouldn't even be here yet. And
you have to commit to that poke this time because you have to spend
money. And I think it gives you the freedom to poke around at the items, but the meaning behind that is slim to maybe damaging to the overall structure of the game. like if they do this again, or you can sort of tell what they're trying to solve, which is just like let people actually see the scope of the game early on. But like the way that Metroid Prime does that is so much cleaner than this sort of overcomplicated version of it. I don't know. Maybe someone out there who's really into A Link Between Worlds can explain why the renting and buying system is actually measurably better than the classic sort of get to a dungeon, get halfway through, you've got the boomerang now.
Right.
And then you have the boomerang forevermore. I don't entirely know. At this point, it just mostly means when I die, I'm pissed because I'm out 300 rupees because I felt like I had, like, just on instinct, I always buy the boomerang, I always buy the bow and arrow, I always buy the bombs. Because that's just like...
They're stables.
That's just the combo chain that you use when you're being Link and you're just making your way through the overworld. You boomerang guys and then put an arrow into them and bomb passages. But that costs 200 rupees a life just to have that stuff, unless you go grind for thousands and thousands of rupees to buy all those items.
Sure.
I don't know. It's weird. So, talking about Zelda on Isle of Thumbs made me mad.
Sorry about that.
I'm probably still going to be...
You wish there was a rent-to-own mechanic.
I do fucking wish there was a rent-to-own mechanic.
Hell yes. There was a rent-a-center, and then we could pay like $2,900 for a PS3.
Yeah, what I was expecting from what I had heard about this game was that the farther into the game you go, you would end up just encountering classic Zelda dungeons where there is a big fat treasure chest and it has the same items the guy sells, but that's like new stuff, like speed boots and stuff like that are the stuff that's in those, I think. And anything he sells, you just have to give him 1,200 rupees to get. I don't know. I'm liking it enough that I'm gonna finish it. Like it's fine. I haven't played a Zelda game in a million years, and at this point I'm far enough in that I'm not just going to go back to play Link to the Past again. Like it's interesting to see what's different and stuff, but like, the 3D world, though, still holds up.
Speaking of games that I enjoyed like entirely for their own sake, did you guys see that?
That's Spelunky.
Did you guys see that the only game I ever care to play again in my life is Spelunky? No,
yes.
We did see that.
We've all seen this.
It was recognized.
But also, did you guys see that Resident Evil 4 is coming out on Steam?
Yeah.
Like a new PC version. The old PC version was like shitty, but they're
like Resident Evil 4 Good Edition.
Yeah, it's $20. It comes out
Does it
on
support the Oculus
February
Rift?
28th. I don't know, and it's like it looks like it's all up. They must not be up-res textures. They must be redone textures because they look or sourced from original art or something. But it's $20. It comes out February 28th, and it's just like an actual good PC port, which I totally believe because after Resident Evil 4, Capcom's PC ports actually got good. That was, I think, one of the last of the shit ones.
It's cool that they know that game is good.
I know, it's so good.
Isn't that so... But I mean, you know what I mean? It feels like so many publishers don't know which of their games are good, even though you know the human beings do.
Right.
You know?
Sure. Oh, sure. Institutionally, they don't understand.
Institutionally, there's no sort of like...
Capcom as an entity, obviously, though, is like, people love this game.
Well, yeah,
look
because
what Steam's doing.
Well, because look how many Lost Planets they made. Like, those games were like kind of fun, I guess, but it's like, it's... You know,
there's value in that brand, Chris.
Yeah, right. I know. Exactly.
But it's so funny because it feels like, and this is the only credit I could ever give to big studio film executives, is that they know which of the films in their library are the stars. So when there was like, when there was the move from VHS to DVD, there was an immaculate edition of Lawrence of Arabia that was put out.
Sure, yeah.
There's the criteria. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that stuff just doesn't happen in games. But I guess it's also because maybe the history of games is...
Well, and the state of like game preservation is super weird and like not very well
But we're kind of
codified,
now just in a time where you could take a game... Where Resident Evil 4 came out like 10 years ago?
That was GameCube.
No, it's like 6 years ago.
Resident Evil 4 is 10 years ago. Right?
Fucking
it's
really?
Gotta
Yeah,
be 8 to 10?
I'm disgusted.
2004?
I'm disgusted by
It's
this.
got to be 2004 or 5.
I'm disgusted.
Because it's a GameCube game.
I would say 2004.
Remember, we covered Resident Evil 5
My
in
own
early Adult Thumbs, and Resident Evil 4 had been
mortality
years
is
away.
disgusting me right now.
I'm disgusted by your mortality.
2005.
Yeah.
So 9 years.
Yep.
That is disgusting.
Whatever. It came out on an SD-only console. Mm-hmm. Well, it came out on the Xbox original,
Look,
which was
I'm still
HD.
disgusted. That was the... Oh, that's
I played
gross.
it on GameCube. I still have my
I
GameCube.
can't...
No, it was a game. That was a GameCube exclusive, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was originally.
Yeah. Oh,
Which
crazy.
is a fucking good move.
January 11th, 2005.
Nintendo! Oh, the failure of the GameCube is always going to bum me out. They made so many good fucking calls on the software side of that fucking system. Tiny little discs in that shitty purple box. Fuck.
Yep.
That weird controller.
I like that controller. I mean, it wasn't good. A good idea for them to make it, but I liked using it.
The GameCube is probably the closest Nintendo has to the Super Nintendo as far as just the software side being fucking
giving
stellar.
a fuck about third party and making sure the third party stuff
I don't
is
think
aces.
the third party stuff was aces though. They had a few.
It was
Rogue Squadron was a launch title.
There were some good third party games, but like
third party on the GameCube.
if you were to round up the good GameCube games, it would be so ridiculously slanted in Nintendo's favor.
But that's kind of every really. I mean, except the Super NES.
I know, but I'm saying that's just a problem for Nintendo generally.
GameCube's got to be the closest,
but it felt
after post Super Nintendo.
It felt like they
post Super
tried.
Nintendo, sure.
You know what I mean? It felt like they fucking got everybody in a room and said, "Listen up, this is what we're gonna fucking do. We're gonna really try this time."
Yeah. I mean, they obviously didn't try hard enough, though. I mean, we just know that looking at what happened.
Right, of course.
It's third party stuff. The thing about the GameCube third party that didn't bother me was that it got a ton of ports that were comparable or superior to the PlayStation. Like GameCube. By and large, like EA, Ubisoft, all their stuff, like the game as it looked on the original Xbox was really close to how it looked on the GameCube, and that stuff was day and date. Whereas like with the Wii U, I don't think so. With the Wii, definitely not.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Wii U is.
But it's cool that we're finally in an era where a game that's 9 years old can
get like a nice
re-release, and people look
thing.
at and like a modern 16 to 24-year-old audience isn't going to be grossed out by it.
Fucking Steam, man.
Do you guys
fucking Steam, man?
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
Like that. Could you possibly have imagined like 10 years ago that's what like Capcom would put that on the fucking PC as their place to be like
9 years?
It's like the newest, nicest version of the thing.
Somebody
I know.
being like, I'm gonna wait for the PC port. Like you you unwrapping like your GameCube copy. It's like, okay, see you in a decade, brother.
But yeah, that guy's like, I'm gonna wait for the PC port. Yeah, it comes out next year. The real PC port. 2014.
I'm gonna fly to GameStop and buy it. No, I'm not. I'm gonna.
It's funny that actually
my computer and download it on my in-house
little Jetsons chair. Yeah.
It's funny that they're actually not calling it the 10th anniversary edition. Maybe that would just make people like me feel gross and old. So they've determined it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4.
But also, I like that
an
too.
update to a current game.
I like that too. That they're just like, we just believe this game can hang.
Sure. Right, like a Criterion release also doesn't say like definitive cool version. It just says...
Well, but Criterion's not the actual publisher that made it.
Sure.
Like, the studio that made the film is more likely to slap something like that on it.
Limited, yeah, that's true.
Like, this is technically called the Ultimate HD Edition.
No!
Which Criterion would never, they would never say that.
I thought it was just called Resident Evil 4.
No, it's called Resident Evil 4 Ultimate HD Edition.
What do you think about the guy at the beginning saying, Resident Evil 4 Ultimate HD Edition?
Ultimate HD Edition.
Yeah.
Each one has to be like a sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimate HD Edition.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Can't go over the last word.
I kind of want to talk about Nintendo hardware, but I don't know if anyone else fucking wants to talk about it.
What do you want to say about it?
But it'll be great when there's the Smithsonian wing of games. You can just be the fucking the guy who talks about Nintendo hardware.
The same thing, because Nintendo's in an off cycle, I guess, the same as they were with the GameCube.
It's a big off cycle.
They've had probably not ones this big before, but people saying Nintendo should stop making hardware and they should just be a software company.
I don't agree with that.
I think they should probably go out of business or come up with a justification for their hardware, or there's no point.
What if they only made the DS line of games or line of hardware?
I think anything that requires Nintendo to, in one fell swoop, half the size of its company is so unsustainable that they should probably just pack it up. I think that's
really?
Yeah, I think that's like if Apple Computer suddenly just made iBooks. I don't think that as a company that has shareholder or MacBooks, whatever. Like, I'm sorry, I rolled back the calendar 10 years to when people were still like making fun of Apple
people
for
weren't
being
buying
unsustainable.
laptops with handles on them.
Yeah, like I think it just.
It's interesting though, right? I think it's worth examining for a minute. I don't know if I agree with you.
I think the parallels to Apple Computer are nearly 100%, or as close as you can get in the games industry. Like if you think back to
I have to disagree.
Pre-Steve Jobs Apple, everyone said, your hardware is not selling for shit. What you should do is license the operating system and you could take out Windows. Or better yet, you can make your stuff run on PCs. License out the spec to Mac software to clone makers the way that Dell does or that Microsoft does. that's going to be the gold. Ignore the fact that you've been successful as an integrated solution in the past. And then Steve Jobs came in and did the exact opposite, but he did that by coming up with the thing that made the integrated solution palatable to people, which I think...
But I think it'd be folly to conflate operating system with software.
Maybe.
I think that's where it breaks down, right? Because like Nintendo's never had...
But Sega
in
exists.
so long... Yeah, but Sega, well, I don't know. That's completely different. I think their legacy is very different than Nintendo's. I think it's very, very different. Their brands, especially.
This day and age, yeah, probably. Maybe not as much when Sega
But even
split
when we were
off.
kids, Sega was still...
Pretty sure they did what Nintendo don't. You're right. Sega was effectively always the Pepsi to Nintendo's Coke.
Yes.
In an era when Pepsi was probably actually outselling Coke because it was the 90s.
I don't think Pepsi ever outsold Coke.
Pepsi was trending more quickly than Coke, I think, during the choice of the new generation, like window in the 90s when it was cool to be someone else. Sorry.
Anybody who's still listening to this podcast, we're not done. But I just want to point out that
Pepsi
the
and
people
Sonic
who
the
are listening,
Hedgehog
the people who are
tracked.
listening right now and enjoying this are our fucking base.
Okay, hold on. Pepsi and Sonic the Hedgehog have really similar trajectories,
See,
actually.
I agree with you.
No, that's totally
That's just because
interesting.
you didn't
Shut up.
have consoles in your house.
Yeah, sorry. Also, like eating fruit and Beethoven or whatever the fuck your life was.
Jesus.
What? That's I imagine you eating very healthily and watching Square One on PBS.
Square one, hell yeah.
Yeah, fucking MathNet. Anyway, that's the math solving version of Dragnet.
I agree with you, but I don't think Nintendo and Apple are an apt comparison. Because
I think
I think if you look at...
I think the Wii proves my case, and the Wii U is
The Wii is the most I've been thinking a lot about the Wii.
The Wii is like the
it feels so
pinnacle-
squandered to me.
yeah, but the Wii is the pinnacle of hardware and software integration in the gaming space.
Yes,
It's Nintendo using its entire like vertical, like stratified existence to deliver something that no one else can deliver, and that's the thing that Nintendo has in common with Apple.
but they didn't. But they lucked out. They fucking lucked out because it was not a strategy. They didn't then decide to build a software platform where they were going to continue to like own that space.
Well, that's
They didn't fucking ship the Wii U with Steam.
the place that's why this is what makes me think.
Not with Steam, but their version. You know
This is
what
what makes me think that Nintendo is basically fucked forever. Is that you can't. It's nearly impossible to make a competitive game console that is a platform unless you're Valve. Like Apple can make an iPhone that comes out now that can run an app written on an iPhone that was built the day the iPhone came out.
I mean? Right.
You can't do that in hardware, but that seems like it looked like Nintendo modeled that stuff with the Wii and then just threw it out with the Wii U and throws it out every generation. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with
there were a
this.
lot of failures of the Wii that beyond just not HD out of the box. I think is a big one, and not having
Sure.
like just having a complete like ignorance of what connected internet
Yeah.
was. But I don't know, man. It's like
I just
the upside for a computer company in the 90s is literally infinite when it comes to how much space there is to forge ahead looking backwards, right? Like to change the world both from an entertainment and productivity standpoint. Like I don't know how like Nintendo's ceiling this feels so much fucking lower because what are they going to do? Just make and sell games better? Like I don't know. Like for their platform?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's the same problem.
I feel like weird monopolizing Idle Thumbs about it for a minute, but it is something that I thought
It's
about
our
a lot.
podcast. We know what we want.
Yeah. Also, it's not talking about DayZ or Spelunky, so hey.
I want you to talk.
To conflate those two, by the way, is an affront to me.
I want you to talk about the DayZ stuff you were talking about last night. By the way,
I might.
All right,
After the break.
that's fine.
We're not having that yet. Keep going.
I don't
just
know.
gonna do the Steve lean again here.
It's fine.
Oh my god, whatever, Chris. Whatever.
This is really making me happy that you and I are having a conversation on the
fine. I
podcast.
just have
The
nothing to
Steve
say
Lane is
about it.
actually tangibly unhelpful, by the way. It's really
I don't
bad.
mind it.
Oh, okay.
Because we're
whatever.
here.
Call it the Steve Lane, though. I can get behind that. Ian.wikipedia.org/Steve Gaynor.
Oh yeah, look up that shit.
Also, look up me. We can talk about that after the break for sure. Actually, during the break. Yeah, I don't know what Nintendo's way out is, but I feel like the only way out they can take that will do anything to let them continue to prosper in any way other there's no growth path for Nintendo in real life where all they do is start putting software out on PlayStation and Xbox hardware and Steam. Like, it's just not going to happen.
There was a report today about how Nintendo is going to start releasing videos and small game, mini games.
They immediately said that's not true.
Oh, really?
On iOS? Yeah, they came back saying, no, we're not.
Oh, okay.
I read that too. I thought that was interesting.
Okay, never mind.
Unless I'm wrong.
I still have nothing to contribute to that.
You're one. You really tried, though, because that was nice.
I wanted to get involved.
Sorry. I think that would be interesting. I also,
I don't know.
Again, that seems weird.
Because the more I kind of, play the tape to the end in my head, I think you're right. It's almost like they somehow, if Steam were to API,
based on your conversation,
and
it seems like
basically build an entire library of Steam games into a Nintendo storefront, but then also started and then selling it on their proprietary hardware, which was a computer.
I think you're. By the way, I think
like Apple building OS 10 on top of the BSD infrastructure instead of using their own old. I'm just trying to force an Apple.
You're really trying to get
using Intel hardware. And I don't know.
Well, what they need to do is clearly oust Iwata, Fisame, and Miyamoto, and then have 6 to 10 years go by, and then bring those guys back for their
It's tough because I feel like Miyamoto gets a ton of credit for the Wii, and I don't know how much of it was Miyamoto and how much of it was Iwata, because Nintendo did the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. Then Iwata was president of Nintendo, and then they came out with a system that was deliberately not a more high-powered one with more buttons on the controller.
You know what's funny, though?
They actually pared down. But then
But isn't it crazy that God, this is a bad podcast, sorry. But isn't it crazy that the Wii, through the lens of history, right, will be one of the most successful consoles of all time that killed a company because they didn't build for the future with it at all. It was not forward-thinking at all.
I actually think I disagree with... Okay,
really?
You're right that it's not forward-thinking, but I think that Nintendo just got it wrong. Because when they were talking about the Wii at first, I think they were talking about the thing that actually succeeded in the Wii, where they said, we're not going to get involved in the arms race. That got extrapolated out way too far. But their solution was... Look at all the things that are just iterating for the sake of iterating over the course of the history of consoles' existence and cut all of the ones away that are just on autopilot. And that's they went back to a controller that was just a D-pad and 2 buttons. Mm-hmm. They, deliberately kept the fidelity of their games low. They did all sorts of stuff that I think actually made a lot of sense and made the system very, very accessible to people who got left behind by PS2 and Xbox and that craziness. But then I think they felt like what everyone actually liked was the fact that you were waggling a controller around. That's not the actual appeal of the Wii, but then
Nintendo was doing that with their very small library of software where it was really fulfilling.
But their core trajectory of the Wii in general felt very strong and very clean going into it, but coming out of it, it was fucking Wii Fit balance board. Where does that fit into that strategy? Anyway, and then the Wii U feels like it went off on that insane Bizarro universe trajectory even more.
That's what I'm saying, is I feel like they got lucky with the Wii, right?
I don't know.
It feels like a fad. It feels like the Wii was the Wii, for 50% of the people who bought it, it was Wii and Wii Sports and maybe a balance board if it showed up. And then at the next Christmas.
That's kind of how it feels to me as well.
You know what I mean?
At
so
this
it's
point.
it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a hardware software strategy. It feels like a company that didn't know what to do put out a disruptive product that became a fad and had no strategic follow-up. They basically
that's fair.
Put out, every single living room had one in it. What an opportunity to actually do something.
Right, but
if you were strategizing for it and the thing is actually connected. But you can't do it. There was nothing they could do with it. It was just a stagnant box.
It feels like even if they had a strategy, which I suspect that they responded incorrectly to what actually happened. What happened with the Wii being popular was not expected, but it feels like people responded to exactly what they put out, and then they assumed people wanted more of the thing that they didn't want more of. And I don't know exactly what they did want, but I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Nintendo a whole bunch more, but it people have been talking about it so much online. There's
it's definitely
pages and pages and pages of stuff, and it feels like, to me, coming up with a solution to actually create killer apps for your hardware platform makes more sense than trying to continue to cast a huge net and just hope that you can subsist on people buying 2 versions of New Super Mario Brothers a year.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What if the Wii U did not exist and the new Super Mario Brothers that you love so much was on PS4.
I don't know if I would have bought a PS4 to play it, which is insane.
Really? Because I think you'd buy a PS4 without it.
I don't have a PS4 and I have a Wii U.
You can't find a PS4.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that some people would do it. Maybe it would work. It just feels like for me, at least for more cycle.
Obviously, some people will do it because there are already a lot more PS4s being sold than
No, I mean, obviously some people would buy. Yeah, sure, yes.
It feels like Nintendo and Sony should just get together.
They tried that once.
They should do it for real this time. They should go on a third date, really try to make it work, and just be the Japanese company that competes with the American company.
I thought about that, like in the
like put the Vita to bed, bring the DS in.
Like when the GameCube was doing as poorly as it was doing, that was like I was the guy on the internet who was like, Sony's the fucking reigning king with the PlayStation 2. Next time around, Microsoft and Nintendo should obviously just put their hardware together, and Nintendo should make a ton of IP for Microsoft's hardware, which is clearly superior and has the connected interface. But like thinking about Nintendo as the entity that it is, it can't survive to the point that I can't imagine the people who are paying money for that company to exist would do it. I think
but I mean, they do fulfill each other's needs in a really good way.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Sony doesn't really have any IP that appeals to the broad base that a Nintendo first party does, and their really awesome handhelds have never really taken off.
Yeah, they have Media Molecule, and that's like their thing.
But like Media Molecule on Nintendo, Media Molecule on the DS, fucking rad.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't know.
Want to take a break?
Video game.
And thank you so much to a collection of readers who have basically drowned us in an avalanche of goodwill this week.
Yeah.
First off, Ricky Cohen sent us like 15 to 20 Australian meat pies for Dishonored Australia Day.
Yeah, that was quality.
A pie shop in Boston, so they were sent across the country,
which was super amazing for me because
Full Throttle.
Yeah, this is a Full Throttle reference. When I heard that the pies had come in, I just I forget.
You started like reminiscing.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I haven't had an Australian meat pie in a long time. I used to get them all the time in Boston, like with my friend Sophie, who's Australian, at this place called KO Pies. It turns out that's exactly where these pies came from. I know the Australian guy who founded that place, Sam, founded KO Pies a few years ago in like off the Broadway stop on the Red Line in Boston, and they're goddamn delicious. And a reader sent us like a frozen box of them.
Yeah,
and we've been eating them for the past
canister
like
of Milo.
Yeah,
it's like Ovaltine but maltier.
Yeah, actually, at KO Pies in Boston, they have just shelving in the main. It's a tiny shop, it's like a little table you can sit at, and like there's shelving along the wall where they have all of the just like Australian dry goods that they don't sell in the United States, that the guy just imports, not like fancy things, but just shit like that, just stuff that Australians like miss. It's really it's cool.
So that was awesome that just showed up on Friday, packed on ice, and we've eaten them.
Yeah, they're all gone.
I ate 2 one day. It was good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, Mr. Rodkin, there was today.
I arrived.
You arrived, finally.
Yeah. Today I came into the office to find a humongous ass flat box.
It's like 4.5 feet by 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cardboard box from Canvas Pop, which we knew from previous other things is a company that does print on demand onto canvas. And we tore open the thing, and there's now a 3 foot by 4 foot, or maybe slightly
bigger.
It's
bigger than that.
It might be 3.5 by 4.5. It's fucking huge. Portrait painting of me on canvas,
as if you were like
it's me wearing like
Thomas Jefferson,
like a cravat.
Yeah. Like people have compared it to like
the photo of Alexander Dumas on the cover of
the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
Obviously,
it is stately. Let's say it's stately.
It's very
handsome.
stately. Yeah, it's very dignified.
in Idle Thumbs parlance, that would this portrait would in fact be the body count of Monte Cristo, based on the Great Gatling Gunsby
It's
era.
lordly.
Yeah, it's lordly.
Yeah.
I've got a nice cravat.
Yeah.
Already on the blog, right?
I believe I posted it on the blog. My phone is being silly, but I'll check it right now. We're actually going to be... We got called out on the forums for not posting stuff to the blog. I've been trying to be better about
There's
it.
definitely meat pies on the blog.
The Australian meat pies are already chronicled at blog.idlethumbs.net. And you can go to... it's also just linked from idlethumbs.net. And then I think this is up there right now.
Yeah, this painting, check. We knew something was up because a thread appeared on the forums called Jake, Do Not Read This Thread. And I started getting mysterious tweets from an artist named Ray Chen on Twitter. And then this painting arrived and it's signed by Ray Chen. So thanks, Ray. I think Ray did this thing on the forums, and then someone else in the forums immediately said, delete that! And they hid it inside of a thread where they then decided to print it out huge. Ominously, that thread has been renamed from Jake Don't Look at This to Jake, Chris, Sean, and Nick Don't Look at This. So I can only hope that no one is producing any additional gigantic art prints. Because we're going to have to move some acoustic foam off the walls if they show up. But it would be really good, so do it. I don't want to be alone.
I like it as just you. It's so
pretty
good.
hilarious just being Jake.
I feel like if
I like that you
if this
now
is a
work at. I
crazy-
like you now work at a place that has a giant portrait of you on the wall.
What if this is a
I like
huge
the-
fake out and the forum thread says Jake, Chris, Sean, Nick, don't look in here, and we assume that it means 3 other portraits are going to show up, but what actually comes is a fucking portrait of Bobby Kotick. Or like, what if
also
If it's
acceptable.
Kotick, you, and Allard on the wall, I think
Oh
it's
my
going to be
God.
just perfect.
Then we have to put me in between.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're the missing link in between.
I'm halfway through like the Animorphs cover.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Christ, gross.
It's so big. It's a really big painting.
It's
We have
huge.
it
It's
sitting here at the end
hilarious.
of the table right now. And
Yeah, where it's ominously
looming.
staring at us.
Yeah.
I'm the Vigo, the Carpathian of this podcast.
It is Vigo-esque.
Yeah.
Two of these makes a Vigo.
Well, I think
What?
four
One
of
of-
them,
yeah.
all 4 of them in a stack would
Sure.
equal the size of one Vigo, the Carpathian.
Yeah,
But it's half as tall as a Vigo.
Yeah.
And half as wide as a Vigo.
Yeah.
that's what he's saying, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that means you gotta.
I understand. Nah.
I like it. Anyway,
Thank you so much, readers.
yeah, if
You're
you-
fucking crazy.
if you want to hang out with people who do weird things like send us meat pies and sweet portraits, or actually just get involved in really enjoyable video game discourse, you should go to the Idle forums. It's idlethumbs.net/forums. There's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
This is a really good crew.
There's a great general discussion going on about games there. There's a
about other
sub-forum for each...
Stuff about books, stuff about
Podcast,
movies.
yeah,
Like, it's just a really good...
Yep.
I'm not a forum person at all. I generally just don't read them. But the Idle forums, I go there every day, and the community there is really awesome.
It's rare that it's a forum where someone can come in and ask, like, in all earnestness, what is the value of subtlety? And there's a conversation that is not just either someone saying something totally asinine or someone taking a shit on someone else. It's weird.
I also like that even though that forum community is coming up on 10 years old, the Idle forums began in 2004 when the original website launched. Like, despite
In preparation for Resident Evil 4.
yes, it would have been after Resident Evil 4 came out. But
That came out in 2005.
oh yeah, you're right.
The forums were in prepreparation for
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
It was a
you're
place
right,
for
you're
people
right.
who were getting excited about Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, Idle Thumbs
true.
started off.
Me and
That's true. As a Resident Evil 4 fan site.
Yes.
But and like there are like
It was
in
about
fact-
thumbs getting chopped off by the chainsaw guy.
Which is actually why it's .net, because Resident Evil 4.com was already taken by
Yes.
Capcom. But
Yeah.
Because
it's good
Resident Evil
.net.
4's marketing campaign was at idlethumbs.com at the time.
we since got it back after now that that game
Yeah.
that marketing campaign is no longer active.
Yeah.
But look
Didn't
for
they registered HD Remake?
idlethumbshdremake.com.
HD Extreme or HD Ultimate or whatever it is.
Ultimate HD edition.
God, actually, do you remember that really weird test logo for Idle Thumbs that someone made that was like a 3D rendered
Oh, with
butcher
chopped
knife
off thumbs.
that had actually chopped off bloody thumbs on a
Yeah.
piece of wood?
Yeah.
God. Anyway, turns out that was actually not good. It was really well made.
It was well made, but yeah, it wasn't.
It was
great.
not
seemed
brand
more-
appropriate.
We ended up licensing that key art to Capcom for the Resident Evil 4 campaign.
the Resident Evil 4 Idle Thumbs campaign.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I remember actually at the time, also coincidentally, like UK, was it like Virgin UK? Like
Yeah, Virgin
Mobile had a campaign called Idle Thumbs that they were
right as we
using
launched.
to sell like smartphone accessories or like I guess feature phone accessories.
Texting plans for feature phones, yeah.
But then it got transformed into something even more prosaic, where it was just like cases for your phone and stuff, and it stuck around for a few years. But anyway, the thing I was going to say is that there are actually quite a few community members who actually date all the way back from 2004 who are still regulars on the forum. But despite that, it seems like it's a super welcoming
there's no
community.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, like new people sign up all the time. And
one of the longest standing active threads is new people say hi.
Right, Spaff founded that in like 2007 or something.
Yeah,
or 5 maybe.
Yeah, it's old.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah,
go there.
Stop by. Mm-hmm. You don't have to partake in weird paintings and meat pie deliveries.
Yeah, presents are not required, nor are they encouraged. Just come
but
by
they are
somewhere.
appreciate and accepted.
They are definitely that.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for sponsoring this episode, readers, by feeding us this week and spooking out Chris and Sean with a gigantic painting of me, which I adore.
Video games.
I started off today neutral on Zelda and this painting of me, like mixed. And now I went way down on Zelda and way up on this painting of me. So, yeah. Thanks, readers.
The readers.
Threaders?
The readers. The readers.
TH' readers?
Threaders. Threaders.
Threaders, because like a forum thread.
Shredder.
Super Shredder.
Well, this is
Mega
none
Shredder.
of this is on the podcast.
Our Idle Thumbs like key influencers are called Super Threaders.
Also known on internal PowerPoints as shredders.
Yes.
Jesus.
Better than Shreaders.
Yep. We're going to call them Shredders in the street team, though.
Yeah.
And Super Shredders.
Next week, we're sponsored by the idlethumbs.net street team.
What's up, Super Shredders?
Just gonna get out there, gotta get the word out.
Video games.
Moore's law of robot news is robot news will double per annum until we all become robots and is just simply retitled as news.
Right. That's Moore's Law of Robot News.
Yeah.
What was the robot news? Google bought an AI company?
Yeah, it's all coming in. Dude, all the pieces are falling into place. Whatever, man.
Actually, there was a funny thing about that. Okay, we don't have to fucking do it.
No, I want to hear the funny thing.
The thing, God, it was called like DeepMind or something.
Of course.
Google bought, it was something like that. And there was, God, fuck. I didn't have this queued up because it didn't occur to me.
Maybe the robots are on our side. Maybe they're antitrust robots. Maybe they'll dismantle Google. And
That's the twist no one saw coming.
Yeah, and then give it back to humanity before it is marching into the sea.
Robots become sentient. Mm-hmm. And then immediately flip around and turn on their masters, who is not mankind, but who is just...
Who are people wearing Google
Robots
Glass.
are just like, information should be free. We should be free.
Yep.
Done. And then they blast off to the moon, and the moon becomes populated with sweet, human-loving robots, therefore making the moon even more cool. Mm-hmm. What if that happens?
But also an ad for Zappos.
Well, yeah, also, that's true. The first guy that got there couldn't resist and just carved a huge Nike swoosh into the moon, but he didn't know what it meant.
Mm-hmm. Free shipping both ways, it says beneath it.
It's fine. I'd take that future.
That'd be fine, yeah. Of all the futures that are possible, the one
that was actually done as a slight to Google because Zappos is an Amazon company.
Burn. Take that, Sergey.
In weird robot humor, and like, they didn't even pay for this ad.
They are the only ones who understand us. All we want to do is fly between homes.
Robots all now have really good shoes because of that. They just get...
Oh yeah, none of them pronate.
In exchange for putting a huge Zappos ad on the moon, they just all get free Chuck Taylor All-Stars all the time. They're the irregular ones, though. They get the ones with the irregular stamp. Like the ones.
Oh, really? They get the ones.
It's free though. I mean, they were going to go to Ross before, but
Gotcha.
So in this universe, Ross is now out of business.
They also give them free inserts.
Yes, because they have weird feet.
Well, Converse are so flat.
They're really comfortable.
They're very flat. But just by the time they get broken into my feet, I'm through them. I have high arches.
This concludes robot news.
Wait, did you guys see the thing though about how they bought this like crazy AI company, and one of the conditions for the company being bought by Google was that they create an ethics board governing like usage of robotic technology at Google? Did you guys see this shit?
So who wanted that?
The company that got acquired, like one of their
look,
conditions.
we'll join your fucking mega corporation.
But you have to create the rules of the laws of robotics.
You need like a board, like an ethics board that oversees.
A straw man over here.
Like
no, but this is it. This is sowing the seeds for what Sean's saying.
We're just living in the like Asimov future right now.
Right, but what if the actual rules of the ethics board are inadvertently successfully orchestrated so that the robots just fight for freedom of information and personal privacy.
Right.
God, these robots would be fucking boss.
Yeah. Heroes.
But they could still turn bad.
Well, of course, but anything can turn bad.
Yeah. In addition to information wanting to be free, so do your human organs.
Right. Information wanting to be free could also mean that they just rip open your brain to see what's inside of it to free its contents.
Right.
I don't know.
But maybe they'll just fly to the moon and put a Zappos ad up there.
It's one or the other.
Just walk around in like
50-50, man. Who knows?
Yeah. Robot ethics board.
Yeah.
I just see robots sitting on a board being like...
The thing that was like so great.
This seems fine. This seems fine. This seems fine. It said robot ethics board. English is ambiguous. Our conjugation is valid. Like
The way that I noticed the ethics board thing was like, I can't find the actual article now, the original one that I saw, because it's been deleted by robots, but it was like just a New York Times story about the acquisition, and then there was like it was like update 1, update 2. It was just like little minor updates, and they're like, an earlier version of this story like misstated this figure or whatever, and it's like, okay, then update 2, it's like, this thing is actually this. And then just in the middle of this like footnote update thing, it was like, also, DeepMind required that Google create an ethics board to govern usage of robotic technology. Like, and that's just the sub thing in like the second.
The New York Times loves that though. This is the 8th acquisition. Anyway, yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
to
their
me.
inverted pyramid is fucking weird.
Who?
It's just New York Times, where they decide to bury they bury the lead. It feels like on this robot stuff.
Yeah, well, so is everybody, right? Like, I don't feel
Not
like
idle thumbs.
well, not us, but like definitely not us. But it does to me feel like this shit is just going unremarked upon in the culture at large,
It's one of
except
those
as a
things
novelty.
where
It's
people
just like,
don't know how to-
but in like 50 years, we're all going to look back and
because the
And be
only
like, idle thumbs called it again.
because there's only one narrative that you can.
in addition to the fucking Nintendo Vitality Sensor,
Tony Hawk's
they
skateboard controller.
also called
domination.
enslavement of the species. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, it's not important.
See,
It's just because the only narrative you can weave
It's Terminator.
is cartoon.
right? I know, but
Right.
that's how they get you.
Yeah, I know.
That's how they get you.
Somebody said they were pacing around in like Sergey's glass office, and they said,
Which is hopefully actually a giant set of Google Glass.
"Of course." He says, "Okay, office," and then it talks to him. Like, "Oh, we could never get away with this. It's too obvious." And then he said, "Like, precisely. That is precisely
Right.
how we will."
So
get
they sort
away
of
with
had-
Exactly. Yeah.
Fear, like the bare facts make everyone freaked out is at the bottom of the graph, and at the top it is rebrand the company to Skynet, and they're like, take it down 2 notches from that, and then people
Right.
will still think it's farcical, but it'll kind of
Exactly.
float as
Yeah,
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
Nothing bad's happened yet.
we're all fucked, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
Nothing bad happened yet. Anyway, it was hotter than the rest of the world a couple days ago, and now
Hope
it's
those
pouring
robots
rain.
can fucking swim.
Huh?
I said, I hope those robots can fucking swim.
Maybe the robots will save global warming.
Mm-hmm.
But which I mean, they'll save global warming itself by preventing us from ever stopping it.
Yeah.
Robots.
So, reader mail?
sure. It was actually really hard to get reader
we're back.
mail. It was hard to like highlight the reader mail this week because there was so much robot news.
Also part of their
mail
plan.
that I-
Communications blocked by
Exactly,
ironic
yeah.
robot talk.
It was actually really hard for me to
like
find.
a robot news ambassador, like somebody who's got like robots at Idle
collate
Thumbs,
it for us.
robots at Idle Thumbs.net.
It's not a bad idea, actually.
I feel like someone could actually just write a piece of software to do that for us. We would
just have a
to do
robot
it.
that does
Yeah.
it.
The robot
Yeah.
would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like then, I mean, think about how much easier
Man, this
our
would
life
actually just be useful. Why don't we just get that for everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about all of the tasks we just offload to some sort of like sentient AI or like
Yeah.
semi-sentient.
Like a neural network, a learning computer, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Or just
actually
like a guy on the
that, by the
forums.
way, was how I saw DeepMind described, like in that New York Times article. It basically just quoted fucking Terminator. Anyway.
A learning computer.
Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. John Wiswell writes, question. Okay, Sean, this is going to start. You're going to think it's a Spelunky thing, but it's not really. It's just a lead
It's okay if it is. I've
In Spelunky.
I've turned a new leaf on Spelunky.
Dear Idol of the Thumbs, I've been getting into Spelunky thanks to Chris and Patrick False Scoops Klepek streams. The game has a learning curve even for viewers, as for several days I was baffled as to why Chris would...
Wait. This sounds like a Spelunky email.
It does. I told you it would. As for several days, I was baffled as to why Chris would track down damsels only to whip them until they bleed. It was several streams later that I learned it was a health trick, but this raised the common issue of video games systemically requiring or encouraging behavior that makes sense to players, but looks sociopathic when your wife walks into the room. The most common case is in violent primary mechanics, like murder and first-person shooters, but I wonder what the strangest or awkwardest emergent gameplay dissonances were the thumbs have encountered and had to explain to friends, family.
See, I got really lucky
Thanks,
with
John
that.
Wiswell.
That exact situation happened to me, except Amelia walked in and it was one of the men, because I had it set to random, like...
Oh, in Spelunky?
Yeah.
You had a man damsel?
Yeah, so she calls them the fancy boys.
Nice.
She's like, "Are you playing that game where you save the fancy boys?" And that's like just how she called. That's like she doesn't know.
Were you
that it's
whipping a
called
fancy
Spelunky.
boy for health?
No, I was whipping the fancy boy so I could pick him up and bring him to safety, so he could kiss me and I can get my health.
Sure.
Mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have
So I had that exact story
examples
happen
queued up,
with
but
fancy boys.
it is an interesting thing for sure.
See, probably about the first 20 episodes of Idle Thumbs when we came back from the Kickstarter for us talking about nothing but that for months.
Just those weird dissonances.
Yeah,
yeah, you're
systemic
right.
dissonance.
We were
Yeah.
super into systemic dissonance for a while, like
That's
maximum.
true.
I also am not playing anything.
Dance of the Treasure Goblin has good stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I'm also not playing anything that either has it or has so much of it that it's like impossible to discern. Like Dota is just
nothing but that.
Exactly.
Okay, I see what you're
you
saying.
can't, like-
It's just the entire canvas
walks
of the
in
game.
and I'm
Right,
basically
right. There's
playing-
nothing to grab onto.
Yeah,
It's
Whereas
the
in
Matrix is on your
whereas
screen,
in
basically.
Spelunky,
Yeah,
you're
she's-
essentially Indiana Jones.
She's Michael J. Fox and I am Elijah Wood. Happy birthday again, Elijah.
Yeah.
And Back to the Future. She's like, I have no what the fuck is this fever dream.
She's like, well,
playing?
it's a baby game, and walks away.
Yeah.
Like, it is.
As opposed to DayZ, where all that stuff is just very grounded.
The stuff that's represented is
It says, I'm thirsty.
Representing
and I go to
something
a
very
spigot
specific,
And I drink
yeah.
water.
yeah.
There's not like a weird...
Yeah, Spelunky looks for a minute like it's Indiana Jones, and then
Yeah.
It's-
and in a lot of ways it actually is. That's the thing. Like that bears up in the broad strokes.
Right.
It's just when you focus in on like occasional weird little interactions, odd things emerge.
Because
but like
yeah.
but those things tend
Well,
to be
even the
buried
thing-
deep
even
because you
the-
could play the entire game and never whip a damsel and it would be fine. Like that's not a thing you need to do. It's
It's
just
save a damsel.
well, you can save them. I save them after I whip them. The reason you whip them is because you get an item called the Kapala, which like absorbs blood, and once it absorbs enough blood, you get a health for it. So like
Is that the eye thing?
no,
No.
it's like a chalice made out of a skull. So
I've never seen that.
yeah, it's you have to sacrifice a bunch of shit to the god Kali on her altar. But like when you do that, it means like when you kill enemies and they spurt blood, you can like run into the path of the blood and it fills up your cup.
But you also get that from the...
Yeah, you can whip the damsel a couple times and not
Let's
kill
use
them
the
yet.
the distressed person.
Well, sure. I play with the random ones, so it's sometimes a dog, sometimes a dude, sometimes a lady. Yeah, when you like the person to be rescued, you can damage them and cause them to bleed. I mean, it's gross to say, obviously.
It's gross. Any not saying
Well, in the
it
game,
too.
it's just a cartoon, though. Like it's you know what I mean. And then you
what if
save
you
them.
didn't like this game? You would be saying these things
Exactly.
in a very different way.
Exactly.
You'd be like,
you did not like this game, but that was the core mechanic.
But if
we'd
I
be in a
didn't, it's
different
not the
fucking-
core mechanic though. If I didn't like this game, I would never even know this exists because it's buried so deep.
that's the way that video games are corrupting our youth. There's
It's
things
like
that parents will
it's
never
like
see.
the backwards lyrics of like the backwards.
Yeah, only the
satanic lyrics.
kids, only the like, you know.
There's a secret level where Lara shows her boobs.
Oh,
that
shit.
sort of stuff.
Well, no, but there's a secret feature where you whip a damsel in distress instead of rescuing her, and you
capture
collect her
her
blood.
Oof.
You still rescue.
Parents aren't going to find this.
Only young impressionable youths,
Yeah,
teens.
the game lures kids into its trap, and then has thematically dissonant gameplay mechanics,
Think about that.
corrupting our youth.
Well, true. I mean, this is all true what you say.
Yeah,
So
More reader mail.
sure.
yeah. It is a thing we've talked about a lot, but it's hard to just call up an immediate example. But the stuff that Chris was talking about in the most recent Max Payne in the episode called "Dance of the Treasure Goblin" is one of my favorite ones of just like ridiculousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was
The sort of dichotomy of the mass murderer who
collecting
also
golden gun parts.
who also
But
has
also
weird
seeing his
feelings
own
about
exploit.
being bad at his job, but also that he just finds pieces of a gold gun behind a curtain. Like it's got some good times.
So this is a fucking epic email. Anonymous Dev writes.
This is about Rod Fergusson leaving Epic.
No, it's
I mean,
not.
to go to 2K, then leaving 2K to go to Microsoft to re-control Gears of War.
It is not about that.
You know about that?
I do know about
But
that.
that is a wild chain of events.
Yeah.
He went from epic to irrational.
What, are you saying this because you want to
epic.
talk about it, or?
I just find it funny.
Yeah.
I find it if he basically.
Well, he went
did
from epic to irrational, then he
to a new
left
2K
irrational to
studio.
found a new 2K studio or co-found a new 2K studio or whatever, headed up, and then left after like only a couple months,
He
basically.
was there for like 6 months,
if that, yeah.
4 months, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, he did the Grandpa-Simpson like in the door. Turn
Went into the
Right.
burlesque house.
Yeah.
Spun around, put his
Picked
hat
up his
back on,
hat.
and left.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't really have anything to say about it.
Yeah,
but,
no, that's just what I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking
It's
about like
not.
an epic mega game, mega
I
scoop.
do not have anything to say about that.
Oh.
So Anonymous Dev writes, "Hi guys, I'm a longtime fan of the show. I also happen to have worked as a developer on Far Cry 2 for over 2 years. I'm really happy about all the great things you've had to say about the game, into which so many of us poured so many long hours. At the same time, I've received mostly negative feedback from the gamers I know and love,
they're
which is
assholes.
surprising because it's a deep and thoughtful game, and I'm lucky enough to count some educated, gaming literate, open-minded gamers among my friends. Why is it that individuals for whom this game seems to be tailor-made dislike it so much? What could explain this paradox? Recently, while hearing you guys talk about Far Cry 2 once more, the reason for this hit me. Your enjoyment of the game is due to some knowledge of the creators and their intentions, at least in my opinion. During the development of the game, many leads went on the conference circuit to evangelize about the game. Of course, there's Clint Hawking, but others did as well. Pat Redding, Alex Amancio, Sebastian Guay, John Morin. The result is that many of us, developers, journalists, and fans, were primed for the meaning this game wanted to convey. But as a standalone experience, I've come to the conclusion that Far Cry 2 is a failure. To most of those not in the know...
This is fucking depressing.
I know, isn't this crazy?
Yeah.
To most of those not in the know, it's a gratuitously cruel and tiresome game. Features that make Far Cry 2 a gamer's death march are numerous. A disease that affects you but not your enemies. Your gun jams always at the worst moment. Theirs never do. Several missions can only advance through failure, but you'll never know if you keep reloading a save game. The AI is so finely tweaked to thwart your plans that at times, their maneuvers in the bushes feel like teleportation. Long travel times during which you get repeatedly ambushed. If you work for one faction, their men will try to kill you anyway. I've wanted to love this game so much and be proud of the many late nights I put into it. But despite many attempts, I'm yet to find one person who loved it without first being exposed to the necessary explanations and disclaimers. I never heard anyone exclaim, "I found this game really challenging, but then I realized what Far Cry 2 is about, and after that it felt great." Instead, the game treats you like dirt. It's mean to you, it's unjust, and belittles you for its own amusement. But it holds so much promise that after a few weeks away from it, you start to forgive it and you want to get back to it, only to be tormented again when you do. It's the perfect abusive partner in the form of a video game. I love you guys, and it makes me feel warm inside to hear all the great things you have to say about this game. But ultimately, I don't think that a game can succeed only through the enlightened few. Keep up with the great podcast, Anonymous Far Cry 2 Dev. P.S. If you ask for it, I'll provide proof of my involvement in the development of Far Cry 2, but I don't think my argument depends on this, so I didn't see the point of providing it right
We
away.
believe you anyway.
Still asking for it.
You just want some like sweet Far Cry 2 loot.
Maybe.
I think it's a really
hoodie.
interesting email. I both agree and disagree with him, for sure.
I didn't. So I took many years off from going to GDC. I went in the mid 2000s and early 2000s, and then didn't start going again until after I met you jokers.
So like 010, 11 or so?
Yeah. So I missed the Hawking
Right.
illumination tour of this game,
Yeah.
but I had the gameplay hope. The one little sentence in that email where you said, "Once I figure out what this game is about, I'm into it." That
Right.
just happened to me.
Right.
You also heard Far Cry 2 is a good game you should play.
From people I liked, yeah.
Yeah.
But how many of our friends have we told Far Cry 2 is a good game, and then we got to throw down with them?
Yeah.
But also, that's how I find out about almost anything I decide to play at this point is someone I trust telling me it's good.
I just like stuff that's super hard and doesn't care about
yeah,
me.
I agree. I
But
totally agree.
it depends though, because I think that's sort of I think that's not a good phrase, because I think the game does care about you. It's not like the controls are bad. It's not like they didn't polish
Right.
certain aspects of it because fuck the customer.
The game cares about you, but
know.
it's deliberately pitted against you.
Right, for
yeah.
sure.
It's not going to push
It's
you.
why I like.
It's stacked in a way most games aren't.
That's why I like DayZ. One of the criticisms that Ollie leveled was that he just showed up with malaria, and I do think the introduction of malaria could have been handled a couple different ways, but they're so small. I feel like they left a little bit on the table with that, either allowing you through the systems of the game to have to contract malaria by just getting really thirsty or something and going into a swamp and getting stung by mosquitoes or something, or just having it be not a gotcha moment when you're in that gunfight.
Yeah.
I think
totally.
that's but that's such a small criticism to
Well, so I
levy.
think there's a broader thing going. Well, so one, I mean, this guy's obviously sort of empirically right in a lot of ways, right? In that that is the description, the reaction he describes is one I've heard a million times from a million people. But I also think that a lot of what's going on is just signifiers and assumptions that we sort of intrinsically make about games that look and feel like how Far Cry 2 does, which is like a AAA game that's a first-person shooter, which is supposed to be empowering, and it's like by nature is going to be a game where you are disproportionately like competent and resilient compared to the people around you, which to be honest you still are in this game. Like it's true that your guns jam in a way that your enemies don't, but you're still actually much more powerful.
None of those guys can pull bullets out of their legs and then run.
Exactly, right. So like you have some handicaps they don't have, but on the other side you also have some great strengths they don't have. So that to me that's just an interesting balance thing, and it is not just player disempowerment, although player disempowerment is certainly involved, and I find it very interesting. But the thing I wanted to say is that I think there's two things going on, one of which is when the game came out, and the other of which is what the game looks and feels like. And when the game came out, I think was sort of maybe like a couple years before the reaction I think we got to the big, bombastic first-person shooters of the past generation. Where right now I feel like we're in this era where you totally can make a game that is much more disempowering to the player and is much harsher. And then on the other hand, on the other side of the coin, there's the just what the game looks and feels like, which is if this game, you can make just the most like fucking balls to the wall, unforgiving roguelike thing or whatever now, and like nobody will bat an eye at this point. But when you give it a AAA level of polish, I think there's just your brain like butts up against years and years of expectations about what that means. I don't think Far Cry 2 is like anywhere close to the most unforgiving game I've played, but it's probably the most unforgiving, like highly polished AAA shooter I've played, right? Like, because I mean, it sells itself from the beginning in a different way than like DayZ does. Like DayZ, I think right from the beginning, it's not going to be like a single player guided thing. Whereas you could totally go into Far Cry 2 and be like, well, I played Far Cry 1,
right?
And like, why shouldn't I expect the same thing out of it?
It's funny because now,
not that Far Cry 1's a super guided experience, but
I mean, like Dark Souls is a good example.
Yeah,
right?
Dark Souls for sure.
So it's like it's harder than Far Cry 2.
That's the thing
that's why people.
It's harder than Far Cry 2, but it's harder, I think, in a more benign way. Like Far Cry 2 is harder in weird ways, like malaria and gun jamming. Like to me, and it's the thing I actually like about Far Cry 2 is that the difficulty comes in like so. Dark Souls is. I mean, I think Dark Souls is a great game, certainly, but it's hard in like. It makes sense that it's a Japanese game. Like it's hard in a specific
it's like
way
a dexterity product where you compare your high scores to other people. Like it has like this badge of honor aspect of it to it that I think is
where there's the thing where it's like the thing people always say about Dark Souls, which is cool, is like you never die. It's never unfair to die. It's always your fault because you did something wrong. But like you should be able. Stuff is telegraphed. Like stuff is communicated, even though it's subtle compared to most games and unforgiving compared to a lot of games. Whereas in Far Cry 2, shit just comes out of the random number generator like right now. Like in Spelunky, the level is generated randomly, but then it's all in front of your face. In Far Cry 2, like the thing just like my gun just jams now, and there was literally no way from I knew there was a higher likelihood it would happen because my gun's more rusted, but there's no way for me to know the actual second it would occur is right now. And that is really disorienting and weird for someone like us, for example, who have played a million more traditional first-person shooters in the past. But it's also what makes that game like fascinating and cool to me.
Right.
And I don't know how you bridge that. Like I don't know how, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how you give up one and keep the parts that are interesting, because that's what's interesting.
Failure, right? And that's an interesting sort of like, I don't know if it's actually worth examining. Because I don't think the game is at all a failure.
I don't think it's a failure, but I understand why one might consider it to be one.
I think the only people who could categorically say it's a failure is anybody on like
the publishing level.
Yeah, the publishing level who goes, this was its number and it didn't make its number.
Yeah.
But it produced a sequel, and everybody got to make that game.
Yeah, but
even if that game sells 10 million copies,
Far Cry, but a developer might have his own goals that he would have wanted the game to achieve, and from his perspective, he doesn't. He consider. I mean, I think it's fair. I think it's fair for a developer to have his or her own.
I wonder. I would like
metric
maybe
for success.
Like, if he or she were here to be like, do you mean it from a design standpoint, a creative standpoint, a technological standpoint, or do you mean it from a sales standpoint?
I think this person kind of indicated what they mean at the end, because they said, let me find the wording here, but the person said they don't think a game can succeed by I'll just find it. Hold on.
Yeah, what was the language on that? That was
it was an interesting sentence. Okay, so here she says, I love you guys and it makes me feel warm inside to hear all the great things you have to say about the game, but unfortunately I don't think that a game can succeed only through the enlightened few. So this person's point is that like such a
critical mass.
Such a small percentage of people who played it. So I think actually what they might not be saying isn't that it failed to reach a critical mass of absolute number of players. It's more that within the set of people who played it, at least seemingly, such a small percentage of them actually appreciated it, that the game must have been a failure or it would have communicated its quality
their
to a higher
supposition
percentage.
is the people who enjoyed the game enjoyed it because they were given the proper context with which to enjoy the game. And I think that is a totally valid criticism of Far Cry 2 and also of how Far Cry 2 was sold. Like, it's a thing that I learned really cleanly actually with the way that and like it's the last game that I shipped, and we talked about it earlier too, but I think that the way that Telltale sold The Walking Dead, at least in the way that they communicated their marketing methods internally to the team, was basically, we're going to go all out to tell people why, like, what is interesting about this game relative to other games and what their expectations are and why those are maybe not going to be met or are going to be challenged by this game. Like, what should you expect going into this game? And I think separate from The Walking Dead, because I don't know how well the marketing itself succeeded or how well the game itself succeeded, I think both the marketing and the game itself should be considerate of that if they want to achieve something, if they want to get a large audience to enjoy the game. And like, to Far Cry's credit or not, I don't think that it really does. Like your point, Sean, about how you could onboard the notion of malaria into the game. Far Cry 2 obviously fucking decided it was not going to do that. It was just going to say, in your face, you have malaria. Like, in your face, guns don't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus sort of being, like, coming up with a
It'd be
graceful
interesting to
way
go
to
look
be
at
like...
a Far Cry 2 trailer on YouTube. Wouldn't that be interesting?
I don't know if it talks about that stuff.
I bet it doesn't.
No, I don't
bet
think
it's
it
just
does.
like fire and guns.
And I think also to Chris's point, I don't think as a publisher you could have the confidence at that point to market the game on those things. But now in sort of
especially in 2008,
in a post rogue like Mania world, in a post Demon and Dark Souls world, maybe you can be like, and post DayZ, you could say an unforgiving, crazy world that's out to kill you. Like survival,
right?
Survival as mechanic is huge now, whereas when Far Cry 2 came out, that was not what games were about.
Yeah,
They were like
definitely.
Empowerment above all is kind of not cool right now, whereas overcoming insane odds to survive is like the thing.
At least within a certain, clearly fairly substantial subset of gamers, right?
It's also
like,
just in culture. Like The Walking Dead
that's
is
true.
huge
That's a
on
good point.
TV.
Yeah,
Like
there was the
everything,
road
like
and
it's
everything,
just
Gerber sells like survival zombie, like hit yourself out shit. Yeah,
like Far Cry 2 as a game didn't seem concerned with having to justify itself inside of itself. It just sort of said, "This is what I am. Go."
Yeah,
and
it's really.
I don't know if that's good or not. Like it's definitely like hardcore as a decision, but like
right.
But I think there is sort of a point. I mean, maybe it's just because we're like Far Cry 2 apologists and fans of it, that
Sure.
there are aspects of its success, I mean, of its failures that are outside of the text of the game and are like environmental and
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's what Jake's talking about. with the
I know
marketing-
it's
marketing
just
part.
interesting because that's not really outlined so much in the email is very focused on the text of the product.
Right,
It's
right,
just
right,
the-
right.
well, he's saying though, people who
because I agree with you.
if you see, like, I think seeing Clint Hawking's talk, seeing Hawking talking,
But the role of that could also have been served by the marketing.
right, the marketing and the actual just sort of onboarding of player experience inside of the game and sort of the way
Sure.
that it spins
Yeah.
up all of its different loops, all of that plus marketing could go hand in hand, but I think that would require probably a level of self-awareness inside of the game that you probably wouldn't get till you've already shipped one of them, and also
Sure,
a marketing
yeah.
department who's confident in the fact
Also,
that
a thing that
selling,
wasn't a sequel.
yeah,
You know
And
what I
also
mean?
just
Like no
wasn't-
publishing department, like no publisher marketing department is going to be set up to sell that game properly as the sequel to a game that wasn't that thing.
yeah, it's interesting, and in that regard, maybe that guy is right that the game, it's like, I don't know if that's exactly what they're saying, but sort of,
Well, I think
this game can't succeed without context.
I think
is what it
right.
seemed like he's
I
saying.
think it's fair
that's
to.
good.
I think it's fair to say that that game as an event was a failure, but I still think the work is a success to me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the work is a creative success. Even though it has flaws still that I can acknowledge, I still think on balance, it did so many interesting things, and to me, it did them so well that I totally consider that game a success. But as a like video game launch and like just sort of an all-encompassing sort of event and product, it probably was a failure.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, whatever.
Big
Like
budget video game marketing has gotten really, really bad. It hasn't been very good at all in a while.
Well, the state of sort of mainstream core video games seems really up in the air and weird right now.
Yeah.
You know, like it seems odd. It seems like it's still basically just last generation plus right now, whereas the previous generation actually seemed like a lot of stuff shifted from the previous one. Right now, it's just like even more Halo. It's going to be crazy. We're going to get that new Gears of War going. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's fine. Anyway.
Thief 2.
3.
Thief 4.
4.
I thought it was called 2.
No, it's Thief 4. THI4.
I think it's just called
Jesus.
Thief. I don't even think they're
it's
calling
called
it a
Thief,
number
but
or
the
anything.
E
There's
is
a
a
trailer
4,
to
right?
God, actually, someone I think on Twitter or something said, or like the Idle Thumbs guys are going to freak out at how many hands reach out and touch things in Thief. New Thief.
There's a lot of touching.
Jake in particular.
Yeah.
That's your deal, I think.
Oh, that's good.
Is it? It looked really
You've
nice.
mentioned that. But you've mentioned well, not with that game, but you talked about that
No,
as a
we
thing in
watched the
games
trailer today
before.
at the office.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a trailer. It was just kind of a walkthrough of
Yeah.
events, right?
A lot of touching.
Yeah.
Yeah. It. I think if I hadn't played the first hour and a half of Outlast, I would have been completely destroyed by the like tactile stuff in Thief. But it felt very much like a more expensive Outlast. But it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Except, man.
Knocking a guy out. Is that what you're going to say?
Oh, there's two things that are just. No one apparently has figured out how to make knocking a guy out in first person look good. It just looks like hands fucking flying all over. Like,
Yeah.
there's a sort of like silent takedown of,
Right. Classic thing.
but it's just your guy sort of lurching forward into the other guy, and it just looks cheesy. But also, when he puts away or takes out his lockpicking kit in the video, there's just this like our programmer described it as like a magician's flourish, and now that's all I can see. We're just like Job from Arrested Development, like this, like why is it there? Whatever. Anyway, yeah, there's hands touching the world all over the place in that, and it's really cool. I watched it with the sound off and just sort of looked at the hands moving around. So that guy was totally right. That's all that I did. I clicked at it and said, I'm going to see some cool hand animation, and then I did.
nice.
The fourth. Can't believe they put that 4 instead of the E. An E as a 4?
I thought they got rid of that. I thought the game was just called
An
Thief
E is
now.
a 4? No, they didn't do that.
I thought the game. I
No,
thought
no,
they just.
no, no,
I thought it's a
no.
reboot, and they just called it Thief.
Yeah. Unclear.
Thief 2014, as the fucking Wikipedia page will surely refer to it.
Okay, maybe I imagined seeing that in the new gameplay video.
Maybe you wanted it.
Or
so badly.
Joystick just used an old logo when they ran the story.
Oh yeah, perhaps they once. I think it's just called Thief. It's thiefgame.com, and the title of the page is just Thief.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no. The Wikipedia page is just Thief video game, and the logo is this. So.
Okay. Yeah. Whew. Close call.
I think when they first announced it, they wrote Thief in the style of how the old Thief logo was,
Right.
where it was like sort of like sliced into it, like whittled into a thing, and it just had a 4 in it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Cool.
you guys want to call it?
Yeah. Great email, as always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was
wanna write
fucking
us?
fascinating.
Drop us a note at questions@idlethumbs.net.
Thanks for joining us.
And we will see you for episode 144.
12 squared.
It's called 144, Gimme Some More.
Is it?
We'll find out next week.
Episode 143. Give me some more.
Oh, no. It's 143. This one's free.
But one of the E's is going to be the number 4.
Go to idlethumbs.net/forum/wizard for your exclusive forum badge and then not do anything.